Alright. Here's our latest project here. You see how small it is? See the size of my hand compared to this? I mean, it's tiny. It's teeny tiny. It's called a Master Utiliphone. Okay? And it's basically, you would have this sitting on your desk back in the day. And you would push the button, talk into it. Basically kind of like a CB type thing, but it was connected with some wires to another one. Here's the paperwork on it. It's connected to another one. This one doesn't have a switch on it. It just has the talk button. So you could talk to the other one on your secretary's desk. You know, you could do the pager, tell her, hey, send in Mr. So-and-so, whatever. And then she could talk back to you, you know. Thing is, though, it's all tube. It's a tube amplifier. I'll show you. Got the tubes put up. I took them out of it so they wouldn't get damaged, just kind of checking it all out and everything. They look in good shape. They don't look screwed up or blackened. You can't always tell by the looks of them, but we'll just see. It's got these two transformers. They're not used in a row like your average guitar amplifier would be. Although this is built in a design that some guitar amplifiers were made to this design in this way. It's called a series filament. Works a little different. It was a way a lot of your smaller amps, small little practice amps back in the day, were built in the way this is built. And you can see why this is built this way. It's to be small, to sit on a desk to talk through and everything. But if you look at all the old school components in it, nothing has been changed out. I don't see where anything's been soldered on. You know, actually a lot of the wiring looks like it's in pretty good shape. Some of it up top, up here that was near the tubes, looks like it might have got a little hot and it's starting to shed some of the insulation and stuff. But I found the paperwork I found on YouTube, on eBay. This paperwork was $15, okay? It's priceless for doing something like this, but it's $15 for this. But this thing at the antique shop I bought it at was $5. And the guy said the reason it's so cheap is because the cord that plugged in the wall was broke. You could see wires exposed, and I'm like, okay. So I said, you know what? I'll give you $5 for it. I seen that it had 3 tubes in it, and they're oddball tubes, but you know, there's 3 tubes. I mean, this freaking switch or this switch or either one of them is worth $5. If you had an old amp and you needed a switch, you could put a switch from, you know, the period when it was built. If you had an old Fender, Gibson, any kind of old amp, you know. These I've gone through it using this. If you open this up, I have it in a wrapper here for safekeeping. This $15 piece of paper, I have it folded up, but inside, if you unfold it, it has a picture of this turned over just like this with arrows pointing at all the different components, and it tells you all the values of everything, exactly what you need, the amperages, the wattage, everything about every resistor, every capacitor, every single thing in it. So I'm just going to go down the list. I'm just going to order all new capacitors. Checked all the resistors. They all check out fine. Then I've got resistors laying around here that would replace any one of these pretty much, or within a close enough value to do pretty good. And if the tubes are good, the transformers are good, speaker I'm not worried about. The speaker is tiny. Voice coil is uncovered. You know, you'd have a little fabric cover right there in the center. It's got a little crack in it. I'm gonna it's a 4-ohm speaker. Found that out thanks to this. It's got says exactly what speaker it is. It's actually a little Jensen speaker. Believe it or not, it's a 3-inch Jensen speaker, which is crazy. You know, all your old amps had Jensen speakers in them back in the day. They didn't make them 3-inch though. I think smallest you would see would be a 5, maybe, in a little guitar amp. But being that it's 4-ohm, you could plug this into a 12-inch cabinet. I mean, anything 4-ohm. So I might look at putting a switch into it, making it switchable speaker-wise, where You could still use this little one if you wanted to, but you could flip it over. You could I put a little switch on it and send that output to a 1/4 inch out, to a speaker out, and plug a cabinet into it. And who knows, it might sound pretty good through a little 12 inch. And then this would be like a little head, you know, that's set on top of it. So, you know, we'll see. I'm going to take this button that you would push out. That's probably where the guitar is going to plug in. I'm not going to put any volume on it. You got a volume on your guitar. Got a tone on your guitar. You don't need all that shit. I'm going to put a fuse in it. 3 conductor cord, because this type of amplifier can shock the shit out of you. This is what you hear the horror stories of some guy stepping in a puddle of beer at a gig and getting fried. These are the types of amps that would do that kind of stuff, because, you know, they didn't have, I'll show you the diagram. The plug has 2 conductors. There's a hot and a neutral. There's no ground. So if you ground and this thing, one of these tubes is acting up because of the design of this amplifier, if one of these tubes is shorting out, which tubes tend to do that, they'll pop and crackle and sizzle and make funny noises, and that's your tubes kind of shorting out in there. That's the tube, that's the plates and stuff. They don't jive. They're not supposed to touch. They're not supposed to arc. You know, that means that the tube has got a leak in it. It's not a vacuum tube anymore. It's able to conduct electricity in there through air molecules and stuff, and it'll jump the gap like a spark plug. And if you're holding a guitar, that just basically means what's coming out of the socket over here, when it jumps across that tube, it's going to your guitar that you're holding in your hand and you're trying to sing through, you know, a microphone, and then that spark is going to jump from your tooth to the mic stand and make your hair stand on ends and stuff. If you have a ground, it will ground through the ground cord and pop the breaker if you have or pop the fuse in the little amp. That's why they didn't even put fuse in this freaking thing. They didn't put nothing like that in shit. It's insane that the way they did stuff, but that's just the way they did it. I watched the guy, he was talking about these amps, and back in the day, guitar amps back in the day that they built in this design, this type of, they call them series filament, where it used the wall voltage in the actual tubes themselves. They put the switches on them. They use little Bakelite switches because that was the safety. They didn't put metal switches on them because if you reached over, you had the guitar in your hand and reached over and touched the switch and flipped it, it might knock the shit out of you. So they put plastic switches, or Bakelites, what they had back in the day. You know, what old circuit breakers and shit were made out of. So they wouldn't electrocute you back in the day. And they're still kind of made out of something similar to that. But anyhow, this is the project. We're going to see what we can do with it. Put a guitar in, speaker out, maybe put a switch, do this and that. You know, put new capacitors all in it. All the resistors check out. So far, so good. This wiring looks pretty good down here. These wires need to be replaced up here. The transformers don't look burned up. The tubes look good, but you don't know until you know, try them out. So we'll see.